Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to a special Fronteras, a Changing America. Today, we take a look at voter activism, a progressive approach, with our guest, Sharon Thomas, who is a retired English professor from Michigan State University. She discovered Las Cruces when her son was enrolled in a master's degree program here at NMSU. From 2007 to 2013, Thomas served on the Las Cruces City Council, where she was also served as Mayor Pro Tem. Currently, she continues working with the South Central Regional Transit District and their effort to bring public transportation to Doña Ana County. Sharon Thomas, welcome to Fronteras. And you retire from teaching at Michigan State,
right,
and you come to Las Cruces, and you discover that you have an interest in politics. How did that interest develop, first of all?
The first thing I got involved in here in Las Cruces was the downtown revitalization project. So, like a lot of other people, I think I was curious about what had happened to the center of this town. It was all blocked up and dark and scary. And I'm a grant writer. I ran a writing center at Michigan State, wrote a lot of grants. So I got involved with that, wrote grants for that. So that was the first thing. But then I think what really moved me to get involved was what happened with the Philippou annexation. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on that?
Well, I think it was around 2007, and Mr. Philippou was a developer here, and he wanted to annex, a half a dozen square miles. It would have been 90,000 homes if it had been built out. And there were no public meetings, there was no information about it, and it was just coming up before the city council. And some of us were quite concerned about that. We asked that there be a public meeting. We finally even went to the Attorney General's office to get the city to hold a public meeting. So I think that really got people interested in what was going on in city government, and so a number of us then got involved after that, and I'd been to city council meetings as part of working on the downtown, so I had some notion of how it worked.
So there was different people that were involved in the Philippou subdivision area that was to be developed, and you have conversations with these people, or that they have conversations with you, saying, you know what, we like your spunk, your attitude. We would like for you to consider running for city council.
Right, that's pretty much what happened. There was also another group around that time that Jeff Steinborn, who was a representative at that time, and Karen Perez, who was a county commissioner, decided they really wanted to learn how these comprehensive plans work that are part of the city and the county. And so if people don't know that those are required by the state government, you have to lay out your goals, what you expect to do over the next 5 to 10 years, or you can't get state funding. So Karen and Jeff started this group, and they invited others to come and be part of it. And so we spent many months trying to comb through those comprehensive plans and understand what they were about, and how they determined what happened in the city and county governments. And then that morphed into a group called the Quality Growth Alliance, and out of that group, I think about 7 of us eventually ran for office. Me, Gil Sorg, Olga Perdosa, Billy Garrett, Steve Fishman, Nathan Small. So a bunch of us had kind of prepared, not knowing we were going to seek public office, but we had done this work.
The theme of the show is discussing, progressive issues, and, is this something that was discussed amongst this group to say, what things did you see, for example, with city council and city hall that concerned you in the direction that city hall was going?
Well, I think it seemed to us in both cases that a sort of self-appointed group had kind of taken over the council and the commission, and for me personally, government it's all about transparency, which I didn't think we were getting. It's about policy that improves the lives of people, and it's about inviting people in the community to participate in their own governance. And I didn't see those things happening, and that probably was why I wanted to do it, to try it, though. As an English professor, I didn't know much about politics.
Let's talk about the campaign itself, because what I've seen in like recent elections here in Las Cruces is kind of interesting. It's really moved away from a nonpartisan approach to different candidates saying and suggesting this is the way we're leaning, to where you can really tell who is a conservative, who's a moderate, and who may be a liberal. I mean, did that exist when you ran for city council?
Well, not at the city level. I mean, the county is partisan, but the city council is not. So, and when I was campaigning, some people would ask me, what party I was at. Mostly, my family opened the Red Mountain Cafe here in 1998. My adult son and daughter ran it, and so mostly I got elected on the strength of the cafe.
Okay.
I would knock on a door and people would say, "You look familiar," and I'd say, "Oh yes, my family used to own Red Mountain Cafe," and then they would say, "Oh, I love the Mount Hood salad. I'll vote for you." so that's
I mean, I would think that would be a good conversation starter, because people would say, what brought you here, and ask about how difficult it was for you to open the Red Mountain Cafe.
Well, sure, and so I had the experience of what it's like to own a business in this community, too, and that was very useful going forward. So,
what kind of campaign did you run? Do you remember? Did you have to go door to door? Did you do direct mail pieces? Did you do radio advertising?
Mostly door to door and neighborhood parties, and there was some direct mail. And the first time I ran, it was a special election, so this was the other way that this happened. In the Philippou fiasco, Ken Miyagishima was the only person on the council who voted against that. So some of us went to him and said, "Will you run for mayor?" And he wasn't sure he wanted to do that. He wanted to make sure his district was left in capable hands. And so I finally was talked into promising him that if he won the mayoral election, that I would run for his council district seat. And so he won, and so then there was a very short time before a special election was held, so it was just that campaign that was going on between November and I think it was sometime in December. And there were 5 candidates, and I used my skills as a teacher who taught research for 27 years. I really researched all the issues. Like I said, worked on the downtown and some other things in the comprehensive plan. But I mean, I actually tried to figure out what kind of questions they would ask at candidate forums and what my answers would be. And so I think I won because I was very well prepared. And I kept saying, I'm a teacher, I do my homework. I show up, I'm prepared. And when I got on the city council, that's what I brought, was I researched every issue that came up.
As far as issues go, would you say that you ran on a progressive platform to look at certain issues like the Philippou issue, as saying, I want to turn the clock back to a certain point where the city can look back and hear public comment to determine what's in the best interest of the city?
I think I ran on, like I said before, on transparency, how to make the government more transparent, better public participation, more knowledge about. For one thing, when I was on the city council, we used to get the packets for the various topics on the meeting, and there wasn't any budget information. And the staff would be asking for money for something, and I wanted to know, well, did we already budget this, or were you asking for new money, or is it going someplace else? So that kind of transparency and how to make people's lives better. And the 2 big complaints in my district early on were the lack of any legislation about how homeowner associations work, and the destruction that was occurring on people's property because of fugitive dust. So that was about, what do people really care about and what's going to make their lives better. And then they really wanted to participate. So when I became a counselor, and we started having meetings. This homeowner association issue came up all the time. So a group of people, in my approach, because it's my teaching style as well, is we're in this together and we're going to work on this together. And I never was a stand and deliver professor. And so the people who were interested formed a group. They went out and got examples of homeowner association legislation. They got model ordinances. They went and testified at interim legislative committee meetings. They talked to legislators to help us find some state legislation. And the first year, Steve Fishman carried the bill, and it got through, but it didn't make it to the floor to be voted on. But the second year, Joseph Cervantes helped us and other people around the state, and it got through and it passed. I mean, I think that's somewhat of a record to get something like that through in 2 years. And it was the work of the people. They wanted to do that. They wanted to participate. They were willing to work on it. And I think that's my approach, and that's what people know me for. That's how I operate.
You went from private citizen to business owner to city council member. What was your experience like in the, in the process of, getting issues heard, working with the mayor, working with different council members to have the things that are important to you and your constituents, that they sent you to City Hall for? What kind of experience did you have?
It was extremely difficult the first 2 years. We had a city manager who really didn't like councilors to bring other information or bring up concerns, and if we did, we were sometimes called into his office for a little talking.
What was that like? I mean, to be retired from Michigan State University to being a business owner, to be a city council member, and to be called into somebody's office to get a talking to?
I saw it as a huge problem that the city needed to do something about, and fortunately Ken Miyagishima worked with us, and when Nathan Small and I wanted to bring in information about, for example, solar and getting more solar on city buildings, he allowed us to make presentations and bring in experts and to really broaden the conversation and have facts so we could make more objective decisions. And I think that was a huge turning point. And it became clear, and we got to be called the activist counselors, of course, but we felt like it wasn't our job to just go to the meeting, read the agenda the half hour before, and rubber stamp everything. We wanted our constituents' voices to be heard, and we tried to do that.
How has the council progressed since you've left office? There's new council members, but prior to the new council members, what changes did you see happen with the way the meetings were run, because we went through a period that was very difficult at times with the minimum wage, and that's what I mean by what I said earlier, where you really saw some true division among council members.
Well, I would say the changes really occurred quite a bit before that. When Robert Garza became city manager, the whole culture of the city government changed dramatically. He works with councilors about their concerns. He always willing to come or bring staff to go to district meetings. Once Olga Pedrosa and Gil Sorg were on the council, then we had a significant majority to bring forth a lot of progressive ideas. So, one thing I worked on was this fugitive dust problem, and that was the other big complaint. People had bought into a subdivision, and they had been required by the covenants to put in expensive xeriscaping, and then many times the developers had scraped big areas next door to these subdivisions, and this dirt would blow in, cover up their expensive xeriscape. It cost them thousands of dollars to get it redone. It got into
I am quite familiar with that.
Their door locks.
Yes.
They couldn't get into their houses. It ripped shingles off of people's houses. It just was causing huge amount of damage, and they had been trying to get people to listen to them for years. So again, we got a small grant. We hired a consultant out of Arizona who came, did community meetings, training for staff. really did an excellent job. And so people got their voices heard, and they, again, they organized, they had a website, they had an email list, they did videos, they came to the council, they brought people who were sick with valley fever. It was a real grassroots movement, and it was heard by the councilors.
Is there room for activist politicians in City Hall, that put the concerns of community over business first and foremost? Is there room for these type of politicians, that work on these things? Because, you hear, whether it's conservative, progressive, you always hear something negative one way or another. But, when you hear it about progressives of being activists, they're saying you're not here to, you're here to approve these businesses or rubber stamp them, approve business and rubber stamp it. Is there room for activist politicians?
Well, I certainly hope so, because I think that politicians, activist politicians, are making a huge difference all over the country. We're the people who recognize that the millennials and the retirees don't want to live in the suburbs anymore. They want to move into the cities. You watch what's going on in Denver. I mean, they have become now the magnet for millennials and those kinds of high-tech jobs and business. And it's so much in Denver now that they have started a reverse commute system, so the workers, the millennials, want to live in the city, so now they're commuting to the suburbs to their jobs. But a lot of the companies are now beginning, of course, to move into the cities, and so Portland and Seattle, Minneapolis, Indianapolis they're putting together really a very efficient transit system. Millennials will say by 2/3, if they could get a job in a city that had a better public transportation system, they would move there, even if it meant less money. So it's that kind of, maybe it's activism, but it's also paying attention to where the world is going. And retirees like me, I used to want to live in the country and have a garden, and now I live smack dab between the two hospitals, near the shopping mall, close to I want to be able to walk to places. I want things to be convenient. I want transit for when I get to the point where I can't drive anymore. And those are the national trends, and in the cities around the country that are doing well, you see the policies that support that.
How do you get, or how do we get, as a community, the students, the younger generations, the millennials, to really invest in the area like the downtown area, to make that investment? Of course, jobs is a leading issue, but what can be done to really invest in the long-term future of Las Cruces?
Well, I think it's the same thing. It's providing the quality of life that those people want, both the retirees and the millennials. There's story after story after story of cities across the country who have discovered that investing in those kinds of quality of life features is more enticing to businesses than giving them some kind of monetary enticement. Those studies come out all the time. That's how you get the tech companies to come. That's how you get the millennials to come and the retirees. I've sometimes been part of groups presenting to businesses or to a certain sector that we've been trying to get to come to the Las Cruces. And my job is always to talk about what our amenities are and what our quality of life is. And we have a huge, huge benefit here with our weather and our beautiful scenery. And so, it wouldn't take much more if we really get this transit and the walkability and the biking and the, and neighborhoods that aren't vanilla, but that have a sense of place and so people feel they belong. I think we can turn that around.
If there is somebody out there that's watching this and they, have a passion for something that's important to them, that involves the city, what advice would you give them as somebody who literally fell into it or walked into it, and somebody that might be interested in being involved, but they're afraid of the things might get messy and they don't want to be involved? What are some of the benefits that came to you as far as doing the work that you did?
Well, I mean, it's a risk that you take. I mean, when the minimum wage problems came up, and and the recall, that got pretty nasty, and I think that was difficult for people to get through on all sides. So, but it's sort of the sense of that you're empowering people and that you're, like I said, improving people's lives, whether it's their Xeriscape or their, or their access to transit. There's a real sense of accomplishment and reward. And to do it like I did after I'd retired from my profession, so to do it where I wasn't under the difficulty of having to reach the next rung on the ladder, or get whatever kind of salary raise or whatever. That's very freeing. Then you can really be yourself and follow your passions.
Yeah, you're also involved. Again, as somebody who's a retiree, you're involved. You're involved in a lot of different organizations, but you're involved with the Progressive Voters Alliance. What does that organization bring to our area?
Well, it's over 10 years old now, the Progressive Voter Alliance, and it was started by a group of people who were disappointed when John Kerry lost the election. I don't know where they came up with the format, but it's really an information exchange. So they pass the microphone around. Everybody gets 2 minutes to talk. You can't talk again if you've already had 2 minutes. People come, candidates come to seek support. People come with all kinds of causes. They're working on the gray wolf. They're working on helping a village in Africa. They're working on why can't we set interest caps on payday loans. They're feral cats, dog parks. I mean, you name it. And so after an hour and a half, you know all these things that are going on. You feel really informed after, and if any of those people afterwards, if you want to go meet with them and sign up to help their campaign or work on their cause or something, you can do that. But that's really all it is. It's just an information exchange.
Does it surprise you at the amount of activism that happens in this community and the ideas and issues that they're working on? Does that at any time make you say, wow?
Oh yeah, and when I was on the council, it was not uncommon for me to get an email from somebody in another community, maybe in Kansas or someplace that was thinking about moving here. Oh, we watched your city council meetings. We really like what you're doing. Will you tell us more about, X, Y, and Z? Other cities have come to participate in those meetings and tried to start similar things in Silver City and Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and it's quite a phenomenon.
What one issue at the Progressive Alliance that came before when somebody talked about it that surprised you, that number one, that it was an issue and that needed to be addressed? Can you remember anything in particular?
Well, some early ones were some things about they were trying to open some kind of new dump in Chaparral, and they already had 3 of them, and so those people came and said, will you help us? So they do a unified action each month at the beginning of the meeting, and those people appeal to the board to come and bring their issue, and they only get 5 minutes, and people can ask questions, and they ask you to call the counselors or the legislators or whatever. Sometimes it's just get out the vote, but it's totally optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. I'm trying to think. There's some real. Sometimes people just get up and tell you about a good book they just read.
Okay.
It's really a freedom of information.
What as far as activism goes, if somebody wants to get involved with an issue, what do you recommend? What's a good starting point?
Well, I would say come to PVA and take your 2 minutes and talk about your issue and see if you get any response. And if it's a city issue, go to your counselor. If you're not getting what you need from your counselor, go to a different counselor. Lots of people come from other districts who would come and say, "Oh, we have the same problem. Will you help us?" And the Progressive Voter Alliance is, you know, a lot of candidates come and they ask for help, and people do sign up to work on their campaigns or do whatever they can to help out. So, but you know, over the last 10 years, the progressive candidates have, you know, won almost all the time. So there clearly is an interest in the community. There clearly are people who want to be involved, want to see a government that's for the better, so for better lives for everybody, not just for a few, or just for a few people's wallets. Or, you know, so I think that it has a very wide appeal and has been incredibly successful. And it's not like the Americans for Progress or these groups that are part of the Koch network. This is just a grassroots group, you know. It's not all that organized.
Where do you see the new city council moving? What are some of the issues that you're pushing for them to look at?
Well, we're working on a complete streets coalition, stronger in northern New Mexico, but they have gotten a memorial in the legislature, and they're now going to start pushing for someone to carry legislation next year. So we'll be talking to the council about that, try to get them. The transit district is starting service again in February in the southern part of the county, and the Roadrunner has just put forward a new plan, and it's much better. Every route goes by a grocery store, going to be quite good. We're going to support that.
Well, Sharon, thank you very much for your time to come into Fronteras at Changing America, and I want to wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. It was a very enjoyable conversation. Right. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us on Fronteras, a Changing America. We'll see you next week.